That's just to segue right into it. So, Dave, one of the reasons why Richard and I both have been saying that we should have Dave on is because in our world, in our book, you are the most even keeled, sort of straight-headed kind of level person as far as your political views and other sorts of things are concerned. So I think that would be a great addition to the conversation that Richard and I have been having. So, so my position has been clear, right? My position has been clear that, and especially as of the recent the criminal court, International Criminal Court of Justice, I think is what it was, right? The genocide claim that came out. I don't know if you guys got a chance to look at that stuff and what you think of it.
Yeah, I did look at it on some level, and I have to admit too, I didn't read the entire South African. I think I read about a quarter of it, so I would like to go back to it. And it did that certainly did have a lot of interesting, points on it. I think it is legitimate to try Israel with war crimes. I think just like when we come up with enough evidence to try President Trump or whatever, doesn't mean he's going to be found guilty, But I think there's enough there. So I think from that standpoint, I think it's interesting, Ben. I think a lot of the things when I saw you sharing, it seemed like a lot of it was anti-Israel, which I think on some level it is. But I think I'm starting to feel that you're more anti. What's the word I want? Not that you want to compare Israel to Nazis, but anti-imperialist or whatever in a
There you
sense
go.
too. And
Okay.
maybe you identify and quantify Israel and the relation with the United States as being that. Is that?
That's entirely. I mean, I would say the same thing, but I mean, besides the political label that you put it on top of it, right? That my hope and my goal here, right, is to start evaluating these things that we see and we experience, not necessarily from the societal and the legal and sort of like the way that it's presented, but more so from a deeper level, right? So that for us to be as human beings to be able to look at it. So forget about the fact that yes, most likely nothing's going to come out of this the genocide thing. If anything comes out of it, it's at least a decade away, right? It's nothing at all. It's no one's holding their breath, but that doesn't mean that there was nothing there. You see, we as human beings, right? You, me, we can look at this situation and we can be the judge, right? We don't have to, we can look at the situation. We can look at all the evidence that we have in front of us and say, look, based on what I have seen and what I understand and what I've experienced, I believe this to be the case. Screw the criminal court justice, right? Whoever those people, whatever. Look, Rodney King was beaten almost to death on camera by 7 cops that they got off free. The legal system means nothing. It means nothing. Like in reality of it, bro. I mean, when we look at it as grown up individuals, we look at the justice system. It is freaking broken, and it's not just the U.S. I mean, that's the truth of it. I mean, if as conscious human beings, we have to look at the truth. It is broken,
Well, in
right?
the
And
case
on
of
the international
Rodney
level, and
King,
yes,
situations like that, I think we have made some progress. I'm not saying it's a perfect situation. I don't know what it feels like to be black or African American in this country. I understand that, and there might be a different feeling when the police come around. But a lot of major police departments around the country now, like New York City, for example, is predominantly minority. If we're going to go down this road as well too, there's a lot of
agree.
And you
a
can't
city
you
like
can't say
Baltimore,
you
Washington
can't
D.C.,
ignore
Philadelphia. Most of
in
the
this
cops are not white anymore,
eh,
too, and
you
so
can't
that like in that, if we're going to segue on this part of it, is
No, no,
I
no.
think we've
Let's
come a
look.
long way. Okay,
The
there's
police
still
situation is a
work to be
whole
done.
other matter. We're talking about the justice system, right? The cops are
Yeah,
just one part of that, right? The whole entire. The fact that look at what's happening with Trump. I mean, let's look at the reality of the situation. The man is actually arguing that I am above the law.
No, he
If
is
I
not.
ki-
Absolutely
dude,
not. I can't even let you go there.
let
Absolutely
Richard
okay,
not.
go.
let's hear.
I
You tell me.
absolutely
You
cannot.
tell. You tell me, Richard. You
Tell me
tell
what
me.
he did. Tell me what he did that Joe Biden has not
Not
done.
not not that
With
did.
tax
Not that.
evasion, with tax evasion? Tell me what he did that Joe Biden
What if,
did. You're
hold on.
no. We are
Oh,
dealing with a
let me
completely
talk,
corrupt
let me
justice system.
speak.
Okay,
I
go
will
ahead.
say it. I will speak it. I will tell you my side. I will calmly and gently give you my side.
Okay.
Right? I don't care about what Joe Biden did. I don't care about what Hunter Biden did. I don't care about any of these things. I'm looking at the individual. Just like I'm looking at Israel, I'm looking at the individual Donald Trump. I don't care about anything other than him.
Because
Just
it
like I don't
goes
care
to
about
where you
anything
want
other
it
than
to go,
Israel.
though.
Huh?
Because
But
it
he
goes
is
in the direction you want to go. What you just said, the statement you just made. You just want to look at the individual Donald Trump. You don't care what Joe
right,
Biden did. Joe
right.
Biden is the nominee for the Democrat side to be
Understood.
elected president again.
The
So
incumbent
Okay.
the whole
president.
point of
All
what
right.
they're going after Trump for is to prevent him
But
from being
look,
elected president.
what, I look, Rich,
Right or wrong.
I'm hoping that we can I'm hoping that we can set the tone of these
Right?
conversations to be more than the mundane, the
No,
shit
I
that you
agree.
see on TV, and to
I agree.
have it be something essential and true to yourself as a human being. Right? I'm looking at it in that way. I don't give a fuck about anything other than that. That I have my own self that I have to look at in the mirror every morning.
I
Right?
for
So
all
in
now
my
I've been on
world, in
right.
my perspective, let me speak, but then I will give you
Okay.
the floor. In my
Yep, go ahead.
perspective, right? Regardless of all of that, this human being, this person, is trying to use the office of the presidency and has used the office of the presidency for personal gain. That's all I'm saying.
Show me
That's
where.
all I'm saying. That he tell you where. Okay.
Well,
Tell me
So
a specific example.
this is where the personal individual determination comes in. Whether you're able to look at the truth,
Right?
right, and say, look, this is the case or not. For example, we're looking at the court of justice, right? This
Mm-hmm.
genocide crime and all that. Yes, you can go either way. Was it genocide? Was it not? The fact of the matter is that people inside of churches are getting shot. The fact of the matter is a lot of the facts don't change. Just like with Donald Trump,
I'd
a
like to
lot of the
ask you a
facts
question
don't
on that, Ben.
change. Huh?
I'd like to
Yeah.
ask you. I'd like to ask you a
Yeah.
question on that, Ben, because I think you've come up with a lot of credible evidence that you've researched about how many Palestinians have died and the type, children, kids, how many have been injured. I but let me ask you a real honest question though. Do you really think it's Israel's intent to kill as many innocent Palestinians as possible, or do they just want to rid themselves of Hamas? I'm not saying they have treated Palestinians exactly like they treated Israelis. I don't think they have either. They need to. I don't think it's as severe as like segregation was in the South, but they need to improve on that if they're going to cohesively. But do you really think it's there? Like in other words, we've heard Hamas and all Islamic terrorist organizations and Iran, I'm sorry to say, they've all said Israel should be banished, banished from the earth. We've heard all these Islamic terrorist organizations. We've heard countries like Iran saying. Now we could go back to 75 years ago. That's all well and good. I've never heard Israel say that. I don't think it's Israel's intent. That being said, the 21,000 Palestinians that are dead should be reported more, and I don't know why it's not. In some way, you do have to find it on some level. So I agree with you there. But what
Well,
do you really think
that's a
that's
good segue for you, Ben. That's a good segue for Ben to actually, because we differ a lot. Ben and I differ a lot on our opinions on Israel's right to existence. So I think you should probably put
I will
forth
tell you. I
what.
will tell you
Yeah, you
just
should
that.
put that forth so that
I
Dave has the full idea there.
I will tell you this that I think the existence of Israel, not Jews, right? It's a big difference. The existence of the state of Israel is what's creating the problem because that state, that entity was created on land that did not belong to them. You see, according to the Arabs, I'm not saying that this is the God's honest truth or whatever. No, I've researched it and I have an opinion, but that opinion may be different. But the fact is that Israel, the country, the entity, the organization, right, is what they're opposed to. Even Osama bin Laden, he said it himself. Everyone is saying it. Even Ahmadinejad said it. It's Israel that's the problem. Why? Is because the state is created on Palestinian land. They're killing people, they're evacuating people. It's the state of Israel that's doing this, right? So that's why they say, hey, Israel's got to go. And the fact of the matter is, you got to look at it. The root of the problem is that this thing exists. So the only way to get rid of that problem is for this not to exist.
Well, yeah, and I know it's a very complicated history too, but if we go back to when Christ was around, right? I mean, Israel was around back then too, and so was Palestine on some level. So, whose land is it? I have to admit, I'm very much, and I need to do more research on this. I'm very much confused with whose land it is, whose land was it first. But
It's
if you do
nobody's
go
land.
back,
There's never been a nation. There has never been a nation known
It's
as
nobody's
Palestine.
land. It's
Never.
nobody's
there's never been
land.
a nation known as Palestine,
Never.
but there's been a people that are Palestinians.
Yes,
And
there's been a
Created
place
by the
called
British government.
Palestine,
Yeah.
right? Yes, because
Sort of,
the
kinda.
history books refer to it, right? History books
but
refer to
Israel
a
was a
place called
country,
Palestine.
like
Huh?
in biblical times. Israel was a country, was it not? Am I wrong
No.
about that?
Yes. No, it was.
They
Absolutely.
were, right?
Israelites were a people. Israel was not a country. Israel was
Israelites
made in
were the Jewish
1949.
people of the Middle
The
East,
Jewish, exactly.
essentially, right?
Well,
Exactly.
you are not acknowledging the nation of Israel of the past in the same way that
Yeah,
today's
that's where my
Palestinians are not.
confusion is with where we are today and
Which
back then.
nation of Islam? Which nation of Israel, Richard?
Like Dave just said, in biblical times, there was a nation of Israel. They didn't
The
have the
Israelites,
UN to declare it, but it was a nation
the
state
Red Sea was
at one
parted for
point.
the Israelites, right? If you believe that,
Right.
I know not everybody believes that, but even
Well, I
during when
believe that.
and then the Jews basically did not accept Christ as a savior, right? But the state of Israel was intact at that time as well too, right? When Christianity dawned.
I believe the Romans had taken over
So
Yeah, the
what?
back then.
Romans had,
The
What
Romans had
but they
taken
this
still
over.
allowed them
debate?
to. They still allowed them to have Hanukkah and Passover and their
Correct.
customs and
Yeah.
everything.
Mhm.
But this debate about who was there first is really
Old as
is a
time.
moot point.
Well,
It's
and I
just it's
understand
just a
that
moot
too,
point.
but and I realize that if you take Islam out of the equation, Arabs and Palestinians have been there a long time as well before they were Muslim. So I
Yes,
do understand that, right?
and
So
Jews have
like
been there.
Islam,
Jews have been
yeah,
there for a while, right?
yeah.
Jews have been there as well. So it's not the whole issue came about with the British Empire, with the
Mhm.
Palestinian the mandate, right? Balfour.
1948, right?
That's where the problem started, right? It started officially with that declaration, with the Balfour Declaration. But before that, though, before that, Jews and Muslims were living together in peace, absolute in peace, in that part of
In
the world.
Now you're
In,
talking about in the
in
West Bank you're talking about the West Bank and Gaza.
I'm talking about before all of that. Before no, when it became the West Bank, that's where the problem began, right? In '67, when they sort of said, okay, this is for you and this is for you, right? They created Israel basically, and they created the West Bank, the Golan Heights, and the Gaza Strip, right? And they were supposed to be for the Palestinians, right? Although they didn't have a nation state at that time, they weren't a people. They just had that land. They were supposed to go there and just so that's where the whole mass migration and the exodus happened, right? They call it the Nekba, right? That I think 750,000 Palestinians were relocated, right, as a result of the creation of the state of Israel, right? So when that state was created, it created a trauma for those people, right? That still lives in the children, right? It wasn't that long ago, right? There's like people alive today whose parents went through that experience, right? And then after that, they're like, look, we don't want this to happen, right? We don't want this two-state solution that you guys are proposing, right? And they resisted, right? The quote unquote the Palestinians they resisted,
And
and
that's something
Israel in
I'd like to find out more on is
yeah
both
yeah
sides, right? When
yeah
these immigration processes take place, is it
right.
like here when the West was found? Like, do people just go out and stake their claim? Is that what's happening when we see
Look,
the encroachment
this
of the
is
Zionist settlers going
Like
into the
right
West
now
Bank.
is what you're talking about. Look, Richard,
No,
I'll
no,
tell you
all
this.
through the
Go on.
last since the '60s. I'm saying because we know
Yes,
there have been
yes,
migrations
yes.
of
This is the
Arabs and
process. This is
migrations of Israelites or
Israel,
Jews.
right? The Zionists, starting in the late 1800s. They've had
Okay.
a systematic plan for moving people, moving Jews from other parts of the world into Israel, right? And that's a systematic plan in terms of subsidizing their homes, subsidizing their travels. As a Jewish person, as a young Jewish person, you have a flight back to Israel, nice,
Mm,
beautiful vacation or whatever for an X amount of time, where they will court you to come back to Israel and they give you a home. Right, this thing that you're talking about there, Richard. Last time you were talking about this, that like I've
mm,
seen, if I don't take it, you take it. That's
you're
them,
right. Right.
right?
Well,
That's
you
them.
also
That
have
they've
to
come into.
acknowledge,
Yes, yes,
in the same vein, right? Gaza and the refugee encampment is a title only, right? Because it was becoming more and more of a vibrant city before all this crap started back in October, right? It had a pretty good culture
no,
going. It,
who? The
it
Gaza
did.
Strip? You mean the
Gaza
Gaza
Strip,
Strip?
yeah, yeah. That was pretty. There were some nicer
Yes,
parts, right?
I guess.
There
I
were.
guess it's by what's that? The place is under blockade.
Right. No, I
How
understand.
could you
I
even?
no
How
no.
could
Let me
your mind
finish. Let me
even
finish
go
my.
there?
Let me finish my
Well,
thought. Let me
now the
finish my thought.
blockade. I think the blockade really started in 2005 because they were
Right.
launching rockets.
Right.
So
Let,
why did they
that
start
they were
launching
using the
rockets
water pipes that the UN was
on
providing
both
to.
sides?
Yeah.
Hezbollah and
Look,
Hamas were launching rockets.
No.
look.
What my
Let's
point.
back
My
up.
point
I'm not
was.
saying they
Let's
should have
back.
done
Go
that,
ahead.
but
I just want to
Go ahead.
finish the point. Was
Go ahead.
that refugee encampment is in title only for the same purpose because as it's titled, even though it's a city, everybody gets an image in their head of a that type of a camp, like tents and people coming in an emergency. It was actually a city. And because it was labeled as that, the UN was able to funnel money in, and people were granted homes there for free, just
You
as the
are,
Jewish people were.
yes, 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 but they were
Correct? Right.
exiled out of their own homes. They were
Well,
exiled
a
out of
lot of them,
someone else's
were not.
substance.
A lot of them were not exiled out of Israel, though. They were coming from Egypt or other Islamic nations,
No,
migrating
no,
just
the
like
ones that
Jewish
wanted to
people were.
stay in Israel stayed in Israel, right? The
Right,
Palestinians
but
or the Muslims, the ones.
some Arabs come into those areas too to build numbers. Is my understanding correct? There is a
No,
migration from
no.
outside.
You know how they build numbers? No one
How?
comes in. You know how they build numbers? They
How?
have kids. Why do you think there's so
Well,
many fucking kids over there right now? Why do you think 70%? Dude, I read an interview by a guy who had 40 children. 40. This is how they build their numbers, man. This is that it's a race for survival. They're pumping them out as much as Israel's killing them. Right? Had they not done this, they would have dwindled. The numbers would have dwindled long ago. Right? And yes, there's no commerce there, dude. That whole entire strip lives off of handouts. It lives off of it. Like literally, the aid that's coming in is what the people eating. That's it. That stops. Life stops. That's why the Israel could do what they did because there's nothing coming from anywhere other than those trucks, and never has been. Right?
let me ask
It's
some Ben though. Do you think it would have been a better, in 1993? I'm not saying it would have been a perfect situation, but we were very close to having an agreement between Israel and the Palestinians. And then, since 2005, a lot of the, rocket bombings have escalated and things like that. The tensions grew again. And then there was almost something actually that was negotiated when Trump was president, believe it or not, 2020. I know that fell apart as well, too. But there's, there's like an underlying, Israel is not going to trust Hamas. They were very close to trusting the Fatah and the PLO. And the
let
Fatah and
me
the PLO were definitely much more moderate. And I saw polls too. Now, since October 7th happened, there were polls that were given to the Palestinians, and over 60% of them before October 7th felt that the Hamas was not serving their needs well, and that they were not. But they don't live in a country like the United States where they're going to be able to vote one party out. In a sense, it's probably similar to the Wild West on some level. I don't know all the intricacies of the inner workings of that, but I really don't. I think if they were being honest, now they hate Israel. I understand that with everything that's going on. So most Palestinians probably hate Israel now, and I'm not going to say I should change their mind, but I really when I look at a lot of these things that are going, yes, Israel needs to change and do things better, but when you have 85, and let's connect all the dots too. When you have 85 different countries across the world that have been attacked by radical fundamentalist Islam, and you have the president of the United States saying the biggest threat to humanity is white supremacy. I'm just trying to figure out where he comes up with this. Now, white supremacy, as you know, and I've said it, I think it's the second biggest threat beyond. But how is it even when 85 different countries are attacked in 40 years, and that includes Russia, the United States, France, Germany, Canada, England, all the Iraq, all the South American countries, Middle Eastern countries, Europe, France, and England now are in a stranglehold effort right now with radical Islam potentially trying to take over their countries. And it's, I'm telling, I know it might sound somewhat extreme too, and I'm not, I'm not saying they shouldn't have the diversity, but there is a shift going on in these countries right now where, does Paris really want to have Sharia law at some point? Because on some level, it's going in that direction. And I'm not saying it's going to happen. I don't know, Rich. You want to shed some light on that?
No, it is going to happen. I was in
crazy.
I was in Munich. I was in Munich this past summer for 10 days, and honestly, in the city, on the street, I saw more women in traditional hijabs than without. There's a huge population shift in Europe, in a lot of these countries, and it is going to cause a change. And do you acknowledge it, or do you just say people are people? But what happens when that shift moves? Because everyone has these open states, right? We all have this open state of mind. Oh, well, we want everybody to be treated equally in Israel. What's going to happen? Because when you're a Christian in a lot of these Muslim countries, I've been looking into it, and it does. You can get away with being a Christian, and they're not going to kill you, but you're not having public services.
They
You're
do
not
kill you in
worshiping,
some places too.
right? But you're not worshiping Jesus Christ out in the open in a public church sermon in Iran. You're not doing it in a lot of these countries. And what will happen if Israel disappears as a name and becomes all Muslim? It's going to be the same thing. Oh, the
I,
Jews are allowed to exist. They're
I think the
alive.
concern we have, and I think in the United States, I think we do a really good job. I think Muslims largely assimilate well in the United States. I don't think there's I know we had 9/11 and things like that, but I think for the most part they want to live in harmony and peace, and I don't think we do have issues since the Palestinian-Israeli crisis, but I don't know if that's the case in England and France with a lot of things I read. It just seems like the governments have gone so liberal. I think we have the checks and balances here where we really kind of strong arm people to assimilate, and you still keep your culture. Hey, I'm very proud. I'm half Italian. I still do the big Italian Christmas Eve, but this is not the United States of Italy. It's the United States of America. Rich Wykin is
Right,
not
and that's
Italian. Rich Wykin's not
I
Italian.
am actually.
Well, I'm
I am
sorry, you
actually.
are. Ben Samurai is not. You know what I mean? I'm very proud of my heritage, but as we all are, right? And I think I think I'm concerned about some of these other countries where there doesn't seem to be. I don't know if they want to assimilate too, and a lot of the things you even said, Ben, that concern me too. We're talking about Israel and all that stuff, but a lot of the things that are in the Quran too, it looks like a lot of things are up for interpretation, and maybe that's why we have 85 different countries that have been attacked in 40 years. Is that really the fault of Israel, the United States, the UK, and the Western world? Or let's just say Republicans. Is George W. Bush responsible for 85 attacks over the last 40 different? I just don't. The great Satan, America. Are we really?
What do you think is responsible when you say radical Islam? What does that mean? What does that
Well, I
mean
think
to you? Like,
radical Islam is Hamas. It is Al Qaeda. It's ISIS. It's Hezbollah. It's all these
is
different groups around
would you
all over the country.
consider? let me ask you a hypothetical question. Would you consider the Inquisition radical Christianity?
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yes.
and yes, and the KKK is also radical Christianity. I'm
Okay.
No,
just saying that,
that's radical moron. That's all that
and
is.
I would even
But
consider the Nazis radical Christianity because
They
they
were
did
not
treat
Christian.
they weren't Christians, but they did treat the church and Christians better than Jews. But they did
Not
actually.
really. They killed 6 million
You know that they
Catholics.
actually on the other side of that though, 7 million Christians died in concentration camps.
Right.
Most of them Eastern Europeans.
Yeah.
But they did treat largely they treated them
They were
better. But
pagans. They were
I think
following
what
paganism.
my point, Ben, is radical Christianity is not a real threat to the world. Now that being, I don't know where it is a threat to the
not
world.
a threat to the world
I
now.
will say
No, but it was a fucking threat to the world. It was a huge threat to the world.
it was, and I would say
It
it
was
is a
a
little bit
huge
of a.
yes back then. That's what. But you don't equate that to Christianity, right? You don't equate the Crusades to
Oh, I do.
Christianity. You don't say, but
I equate the KKK with Christianity, absolutely.
Do you really?
And white supremacy. Yeah, they were
Well, I can
they
equate it with
were
white supremacy.
they were doing the work of the Bible in their mind. They were twisted motherfuckers.
They're stupid.
Yeah,
That's not
no,
Christianity.
they believed
Just
in
like the Crusades weren't following the word of
no,
Christ.
that's what I'm saying.
no, but
That's
Well,
my.
yeah, and Ben and I have talked
no,
about
but
this.
they
That
thought they were though.
right,
Just like
like, well, that's the
yeah,
same. That's the
Of
same with
course, they thought
Islam.
they were. They were doing the
yeah,
work of God, man. They were doing God's
yeah.
work. Of course, just like Islam and radical Islam are two different things,
But I
right? They're
guess
two
my point, if I
completely
can bring
different
it
things.
back, Ben, the question I had for
Yes,
you, Ben,
yes.
is yes, I think Israel needs to change. I think the United States needs to change. I think we all need to grow and become more tolerant in a lot of ways too. But I also think that to be honest with you, I think the number one people that need to change is radical Islam. I really if you can find things over the last 50 years now, I do think radical Christianity and white supremacy is a big concern in the United States
Where
still.
is it, Dave? Where
I
is
do.
white supremacy in the United States right now?
Well,
Show me. I
I'll
don't see it.
I can come up with three.
Okay,
The kid that killed the black people in the Charleston church.
that's
The
one
guy
man.
that
That's not
drove the
white
car.
supremacy. That's a murderer.
Yeah, well that
That's a murderer.
he was a white supremacist though. The guy that went into a Pittsburgh synagogue and killed all the Jews was a white supremacist.
So we have transgender supremacy going on with the 5 last school shootings
No, I'm just saying
because
that
all 5 of them were transgender individuals.
yeah, but
So if
Rich, you
you're going to
can't.
relate these morons that kill people, right, that savagely end someone's life for no good reason with this boogeyman that the media is building up
No,
of
I'm not
white
saying it's as
supremacy.
big as the Klan was at one time or segregation or anything like that. What I'm saying is though the United States does have a history of white supremacy. You can't deny that.
I think we have a history of
It's
a
the greatest
large
nation in the history of the
white
world, but we do.
population,
Yeah.
and
No, no,
we've
Richard, I have to agree with David here. No, man,
well, I
having a
disagree.
large white population is different than that large
I
population thinking they're
I
better than
feel
the rest.
more racism directed at me at this point in my life for
No, I
being
think
white.
that's accurate too, though. I don't think that's inaccurate, but I'm just saying from a historical standpoint,
Oh well,
when we see a white person go to a black church, these are really wonderful, nice people that started talking to him and befriended him in the church and welcomed him into the a church of God, and then he opens up and shoots them because they're all black. There was another guy that went into a Buffalo supermarket, a predominantly black area, and shot all black people too. So it does go on. Yes, it is few and far between, and most white people I don't think are
well,
like
how
that
many white
anymore.
people are killed every year by black people in comparison?
Well, I understand that there's more random
So
crime that's done
is
like
that
that.
black supremacy then?
No, I think that's more just random crime and
Why is it
violence.
random
That's
crime when that guy's an asshole and it's
no, there
not
are
random
blacks
crime?
that kill in the name of race too.
Oh,
I'm just saying
absolutely.
it's not. These guys, these guys that did these things were all. If you went to their social media, they had all Hitler stuff and
Well, listen, you're dealing with right. Our population is
yeah,
what 51% white, and
something
the
like
black
that.
population is like 13% of the
13%.
population. So, are you going to get more crazy assholes out of 51% of the population than you are out of
No, and
13%?
I don't think white
Absolutely.
supremacy is a. I don't think it's a threat to the world. Like radical Islam, I do think. how much more evidence do we need than 9/11 and the 85 countries attacked? Let's not, whether it's the United States' fault or Israel or not, 9/11, you don't let over 500 Muslims die in 9/11.
See that now? Yeah,
Osama
Yeah,
bin
look, Dave,
I
Laden.
don't.
Dave. I'm sorry to interrupt, but
Good.
this point of radical Islam, right, is a point. It's something that keeps coming up, right? And you have an image of what that is in your mind, right? And I want to know what that is. Like, what does a radical Islamist do? A radical Muslim? What is the motivation? I can tell you that 9/11, right? You add the 9/11 to that, Nick. I can tell you that based on the guy who carried that out, 9/11 was related to the Palestinian occupation, right? It's not a radical Islam thing, right? The cause for that was that. Now, in your mind, what are the other causes for these radical Islamists? Like, what do you like when you say 85 countries were attacked? What were the causes for those attacks?
All
What
right,
were
well,
they
let me
doing?
ask you, I'll
Yeah,
ask you a question, Ben. Why was
yeah.
Belgium attacked?
I don't
Why is
know.
Belgium,
I don't even know. I
is
don't.
Belgium, is Belgium the great Satan like the United States and
I
Israel?
have no idea. I don't know the case that you're talking about, but I'm almost certain that
Why
there's
was
a
Russia
cause for
attacked?
it. I have no idea. Again, I'm going to say that there's a cause for it, right? And the cause is not just because I'm a Muslim, so I will blow things up. No, I may be a twisted Muslim that I think that I'm doing God's work, just like the Crusades. I might be an
Yeah,
idiot.
I
I
get
might
it.
be this. I might be that. That I'm doing these things, but Islam is not the one that's directing me. Just like Christianity and Jesus Christ was not directing the
No,
Crusades.
it's a
Yeah,
distortion of
yeah.
Islam. It's not what Islam's supposed to be. I
So
completely
then,
agree.
then don't stop saying radical Islam. There is no such thing. If it's radical, it's not Islam.
All
That's
right, so
simple.
what you're, well, then I could say it's Muslims that are not acting in their faith.
There you go. Thank you so much. People that and
That's
people do these things, man. People do
I
these
don't have
things
a
on all
problem
sides,
calling, but I
right?
can
But the
call the
heart of
KKK radical
Islam, the
Christianity.
core of Islam, is all about truth, love, and acceptance. Islam, at the core of it, prohibits introducing, even like bringing people into the religion other than their own will, like even saying, oh, I
I,
think
I,
you should become a Muslim,
I believe that.
let alone forcing them. You can't even suggest it, let alone force someone.
I believe
It's
that. And I
written
don't
in the
question
book.
that. I believe that, and I don't question that. So let's have the discussion then. Okay, we could say
Yeah,
that you know what, and I'm gonna throw you a bone here too, in the sense
yeah,
too that I think the USA on some level, a lot of the policies that happened after we helped the Afghans drive out Russia with the Mujahideen.
yeah,
We helped the Mujahideen drive out the Russians, and then we were
yep,
really supposed to help finish the job and build their infrastructure, and
yep,
we left them for nothing.
yep.
Now,
There you
does
go.
that mean they should have committed 9/11 20 years down the road? No, I'm not saying that justifies that, but yes, we made a lot of mistakes. We had a enemy that was the same, and that was a terrible thing that we let the Afghan people down after uh, they drove the Russians out. No question about it. And it led to Osama bin Laden and things like that.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
let's get back to Islam for a second, in the sense too
yeah,
that why is it that, you know, like you've said this before too, when you look at ancient Persia, Ben, and
yeah.
ancient Egypt, right? They came up with all these incredible, modern advancements for the world, and technology and engineering and architecture and different things like that too. And it seems like Islam is holding back these countries now, to me, in a sense where you have women, as second class citizens, beaten, mutilated, raped sometimes, things like that.
Again, again.
I don't know what
That's
the,
that you can't attribute that to Islam, man. You cannot. You can. I know the
well,
society
then it's
does
Islam
that, the
being,
media does that. It's truly not that way. Islam is not what. It's not the religion that's saying do this. Just like in Uganda, I mean, being gay over there is a death sentence,
Right.
right? And it's the people that are doing this, right? It's no other, and it's a great segue. I mean, I think I was hoping to sort of get to this point of looking at these issues from a societal perspective, right? Not necessarily as like an individual examples of how a system could be broken or not, but as a whole entire society, how we're following these things and how they're shaping the way that we act, right? In terms of like, just like your view of is like radical Islam, changing your whole entire perspective of even looking at a Islamic, like a Muslim, like this person that you're talking about in Islamic countries that are doing this, automatically you're looking at it with the light of radical Islam. So it taints everything else that you see, right? And
Well,
it's
that's
and
not my view on Islam. I'm talking about a very small percentage that happen to be radical. Now, I can call it something different if it offends you. That's fine. I don't have a
no, no,
problem
no,
with
No,
that.
it's not an offense at all, my friend. I
I
didn't.
mean, I could say we could just say it's Muslims that are not acting in the Muslim faith or whatever you want to call it. Or you could just call them degenerates, whatever. I don't know.
well,
But
Or
there's
just call it.
it's an interesting angle that we really haven't talked about.
Yeah,
Maybe one of the things that's so offensive in the West, there's no denying that a lot of traditional Muslim countries tend to run a little more conservative in their views than we do, right?
yeah,
Not that every Muslim is so anti-gay that they'll throw someone off a roof, but I think a lot of our culture, the way it's probably looked at as moral decay. And I
yeah.
think that causes a lot of the animosity towards us. And it's probably pushing a lot of people of that mindset to go further away from the modern way of life because they look at how corrupt and how gross some of our behaviors are getting. Right? I mean, that's something I meant to bring up last time, Ben, and I just
Well,
wondered
I
what
think the
your
gay and the
perspective was on
transgender in
that.
the United States are not going to agree with at all.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Because God, I mean, if you have just like a devout Christian isn't
And
ever
I
going to
think it's
go
sort of a
by it.
Jews one either.
God made you the way you are, and that's a gift. That's going to be the view of the conservative believer, no matter what religion you're in. They're going to believe that God doesn't make a mistake. So that's not something I think that would be welcomed in that culture.
I'll tell you a story. Tell you that I was thinking about this whole situation. I think the view of my country, right? The way
Yeah.
that it, growing up, right before the age of like 9, 10 years old. I remember my family, my mom. They had a family. They had a friend, family friend. The guy, I didn't understand this at that time, right? He was married. The dude was married, but he was clearly gay. He was gay. I didn't know it at the time. I just felt as if he was a little bit, he's a little bit, he hung out with the women all the time. He was the one that cooked in the house, right? All the
Mm-hmm.
things that are attributed towards the female role, he was the one who did. And he loved it. And he was fully accepted by his wife and the rest of the community. Like my mother. My mother would sit around and joke around with him as if it was one of the women. They would exchange
But is
like cooking stuff with it. But this is inside of. I mean, he's not going to go out and wave a flag saying, "Hey, gay pride." He's not going to go out and like do. He's not necessarily going to live that kind of a life that brings attention to it,
but
right?
he
But
was married to a woman, right?
he was married to a woman.
Right. So maybe his behaviors were effeminate, but he wasn't outwardly living a gay lifestyle.
He wasn't. He wasn't
Right.
outwardly living a gay lifestyle, right? I can tell you that.
Right.
No, he wasn't. He wasn't doing
I don't
that,
think
and
1970s America was much different than that.
that's exactly right. And when the time
Yeah.
came,
I think you're right.
right, that opportunity was presented to the people, and when the time comes, right, Islam, like all other, right, will eventually adjust. Right, we were talking
Yeah.
about the Baha'i faith the other day, right? Richard, remember?
Yeah.
That's
Absolutely.
the next rendition. It will adjust, and that's the bigger picture here. The bigger picture here, as far as I'm concerned, is not these little tiny nuances of what is Israel doing, or is the truth of the situation, right? Is evident, right?
Yeah.
Is every one of us needs to find out for themselves, right? That is this true? Is this the case? And that attitude is what bleeds out externally, right? It bleeds out like right now. I know that on my Facebook page, I have friends on both sides that don't want to engage in a public arena.
Yeah, I know.
They
And
just don't.
I don't blame people. It's things have gotten so toxic, you know.
I think
It's
being
I
silent
commended
makes it more toxic, though.
It's
Richard Scott
absolutely
Russicker
more
stole away.
toxic. It's
Yeah.
absolutely more toxic, man. If you don't talk about this stuff, if you don't get it out, if you don't challenge your thoughts, your own thoughts, right? These people are doing it for themselves. Why are they communicating with me? Because I am that other voice in their head,
Yeah.
right? I'm that for them to sort out their own, and we all need to do that. We need to sort out the truth in our own minds based on what it is that we see, and based on my perspective, based on all the things that I've seen and I've researched about
Yeah.
this Israel situation. This Israel situation will be the end move in this play.
So
That's it.
what do you think? What do you think happens, Ben? Let's just say that Israel declares that they have flushed out Hamas. Something else will prop up, and what
Absolutely.
happens next? Then? Do they bring the Palestinian people back, or do they try to move them to?
They're
Because I
trying to
don't think
get them into the Sinai Desert. They're trying to
in
force
the
them into the
Sinai
Sinai
Desert in
Desert.
Egypt,
Yeah,
right?
they're
Yeah,
trying to
and
get
they're
them
being
up
denied.
there.
But I don't
Yeah.
think the Egyptians
Oh,
want to
the
No,
allow.
Egyptians don't want
Egypt denied them. Yeah.
Yeah.
on purpose. You know why they denied them? You understand why? It's not that
Oh yeah.
we don't want the Palestinians.
No.
No,
No.
Yeah.
strictly because we don't want them here because they belong on their own land.
Yeah.
They don't. I don't want because if they come here, they'll never go back. You know what I'm saying? They'll be refugees for the rest of their lives, and they'll become this dislocated bunch of people. That's why no one wants them. They don't want them to come. They know what the plan is. They know what Israel's plan is, and this has always been the case, right? At the root of it, honestly, sincerely, at the root of it, is about that. And the reason why you mentioned this earlier, why do these other three attempts, with Clinton, this and that, the other thing. The only reason all of these attempts have fallen is because of Netanyahu. Netanyahu, for the past 30 years, I've read through the track record of the things that he has done. He has been strong opposition to Palestinians, and everything that he's done is trying to build up that Jewish state. So he's not at all concerned. And right now, as we speak, his approval rating is at 15%. He is hated. The Israeli population have had it up to here. He failed on the refugee and the hostages. We don't even know how many of them are still alive. They've already called for an election. As soon as the war is over, there's going to be an election. He knows he's in hot water, right? And he's pushing everything that he can to get a positive outcome out of this war, and he would stop at nothing. And they're a nuclear state. They're a nuclear state, and they're not listening to anybody, right? Nobody. You saw that little. He said, not the Hague, not not Hamas. Nobody's going to stop us. Netanyahu gave that speech,
Now let me ask
just
you something,
basically
Ben.
saying screw you.
What do you see in a Middle East? Say that's the truth, right? That's the absolute truth that Israel wants the entire land for themselves, to the borders to
Yeah,
include all the Palestinian settlements. They get that. Say they
yeah,
get that.
So you're saying
Every
the entire West Bank and the
the
entire
entire
Gaza
West
is all
Bank, the
Israeli.
entire
yeah,
Gaza,
All the
yeah,
Palestinians are
yeah.
flushed out.
it all
That's it.
becomes Israel. It all becomes
It all
Israel,
becomes Israel.
right?
Yeah.
It all becomes Israel.
What do you see happening beyond that?
I see an entire freaking war. I see
No,
that
no, no.
every
Okay.
single Islamic state will turn around and say, no way.
No, I meant
Already it's
what
happening. Yeah.
I meant. Do you think that they would, like, their intent would be to expand beyond that, or do you think that their intent is specifically to just take over that whole
Israel?
landmass?
No, no, they just want that. What? Expand. Israel expand where? Like what? As long as you give them that piece of land right there and security, which they'll never have. They will never have security. They will never, ever, ever have security. Ever. I mean, that's just, I can so comfortably say that. They'll never, ever have security, right?
Hey
They can
Ben, do
take
you
the
think
whole land.
there's a with Israel and Jews at large too, do you think the lack of trust with Arabs in general, I'll leave Muslims out of it, just Arabs in general, goes back to World War II though as well too, because Hitler was meeting with Arabs back then as well and formed alliances with them, probably more for oil. He would have backstabbed the Arabs if he had an opportunity,
Yeah, yeah.
without question. But nonetheless, the Arabs didn't like the Jews back then either, and the Jews probably didn't like the Arabs back then, and you know, there are pictures all of Arabs
So
meeting with Jews
remember,
back. Excuse me,
the
Arabs meeting
Zionist
with
movement, the Zionist movement started in 1919. Not officially, but people started moving there. In Woodrow Wilson, I was telling Richard this.
the League of
Woodrow
Nations.
Wilson sent a delegation over there, right, to Palestine to assess the situation. What's happening? He came back. It was called the Wilkes King report or commission. Commission came back saying, "Dude, it's crazy. Stop these Zionists from going over there. Stop it. Stop it. No more coming." So they knew, and the Arabs were up in arms with them already. As early as that in the 30s, they were up in arms. Why are you all people coming here? Right? And it was creating tension. So Hitler banked on that. Right? And that's been the case. Like even the British, like when the Ottoman Empire fell, the reason why this craziness was happening with the Balfour the Proclamation and all that is because they were promising things to people for their alliance, for their help, giving things to Arabs, promising things to Arabs, their own states, so that they could have their help, and they were promising things to the Jews, saying that you can have your nation state if you give me your help, and the same thing. So created the conflict right off the bat. So but all of that I think falls sort of to the wayside, right? In light of the true the true outcome in reality, right? This does not have a solution. This is like a sore. This is a cancer that has no cure, right? And what's happening right now, right? The escalation, and it's going to become that way, so that this becomes the final showdown, right? This is, in my opinion, will be the final showdown, right?
Looks
That
like we're
this
very
matter will
close to World
resolve.
War III here.
We are
Yeah, I
Hopefully,
agree.
very close, man. We are very close. We are very
Let me
close.
ask you though, what is the difference of what Dave and I were talking about before? What is the purpose of the huge influx of Muslims into all the other nations in Europe?
What do you mean? What is the
Is that
purpose?
is that is that an occupation
Oh no.
like is
I
being
mean, not
declared
the,
the
how are
Zionists
they
are?
not? How are they not migrating? I
Well,
mean,
they're
why do you
migrating.
think it's
They're
not
migrating
migrating?
because they're
Yeah.
talking about instituting Sharia law in the
Who is
nations that
doing
have
that? Who's?
they're
How am
I
I
think in
not?
certain neighborhoods, they're trying to do it in France and England.
yeah,
Now,
France
I
and England
agree with you,
both.
Ben. I
Yeah.
don't think it was I think it was a migration, a legal migration for better opportunity. But I think once certain ones have gotten entrenched into the system in England and France, I think in certain segments I've read things where they want to create Sharia neighborhoods. So
Yeah,
like
where
a
they would take
Sharia,
over their own policing, kind of like
yeah,
in
like that like in the United States we have separation of church and state. A Sharia neighborhood is illegal, right?
we really don't have separation of church and state. That doesn't exist. That's
We,
that's that's a falsehood. We have protection from a declared national religion, but there is no separation of church and state. That was a statement made by Thomas Jefferson, but
Well,
it's
when you
not
say that,
it's
though,
not
are you saying that Christianity controls the United States?
no, no, not at all. But I'm saying we don't have to have a barrier wall between people's faith and the government. Each
But the
individual person that's elected,
but governmental
but we don't
decisions
we
cannot be made based on religious
well
motivations.
well let's be
They're not
honest, right?
supposed to
No
be.
matter no well your moral guidance in most people is guided by your religious beliefs.
No, I
So
understand that, and I don't
there's
disagree
no
with
way to
that.
say that there's no way to say that it's completely
Yeah,
taken
Right.
out of a
That
person's
makes
decision.
perfect sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
yeah.
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that like in other words, if let's just say a neighborhood in Brooklyn, uh, let's say it's 2 square miles, they wanted to, and it's predominantly Muslim, they wanted to declare Sharia law. Now, for any religion, for that, for that matter. I like. Is this what you've read, Rich? That I've read certain things that they're trying to do some of these things in England and France.
Absolutely, and Dearborn, Michigan, is one of the ones here in the United States that's been.
So they're actually trying through the law to
Yeah,
create a Sharia state,
yeah.
if you will,
You
Actually,
know,
all
yeah.
all the people in power are Muslim now, and they
in
are.
that.
And there's instigators that go in to try to prove the point, and they go in and they try to speak the gospel, and they get shut down on the street. Like First Amendment rights are kind of off the charts, and they're arrested and let go. And it does exist. If you look up Dearborn, Michigan, it happens within our own boundaries. So I don't think it's out of the question that it's going to take root once a population gets to a certain size in places
And
like
what
Germany and
and what
France,
what do we see as the problem with that?
because it's an established nation. That's the same colonization that everybody's worried
Wait,
about with
so
the
for
Zionists,
people
isn't
to
it?
act a certain way based on their own beliefs inside of a different larger system is not a good thing.
No, you
Why?
can't have laws within laws
How
because
how
you
how
could have
how are the
harsher
Mormons
laws
any different? How are the Mormons any different?
because they
Well,
don't
technically, the
inflict capital
Hasidics are the
punishment.
same way as what Ben's saying too.
Yeah,
Yeah, they
the
are,
Hasidics.
The Hasidics
How about them,
operate.
Dad? Yeah.
but
The Hasidics
they
do
can't,
operate in a vacuum, but they're not trying to. They're not trying to control the country, though.
and
Who
they
said that the
can't
other
dole
ones
out.
are? And
Well,
how have
I
you
think
deduced that the other
I
ones
think
are?
the theory is that Sharia wants to make an impact, and like Jews don't want to change other people into Jews, but I think the theory is that Sharia wants to force its way. Now, I'm not saying that's true or not. I think that's the scare
It's
that
it's
Well,
people.
no,
it's
you
not.
have to look at
It
some of the
The
punishments in
Hasidics don't
Sharia.
want to do that, but what they do, Ben, you're absolutely right. It's not really much different from what the Hasidics do. Yeah,
it isn't. They live by their
Uh,
own rules. As long as they
they
live
do
within the
actually break
greater set of
laws on
rules, they
some
can live
level
by
but
those
within their
rules.
community.
you can't bypass people's constitutional rights with a sub government within the United States. You can't. So if something is a protected constitutional right, the person that's instituting Sharia law can't enforce that on the citizens of that. If a
Yeah,
person that's in within those
yeah.
boundaries,
It has to
even if
be.
they're
It has to
Muslim, says
exist within the same set of rules. Of
right
course,
within the
that
same
makes
set of
sense.
rules,
Yeah.
that's where it runs into problems.
And is there such a discrepancy between the two? I
Dearborn,
mean,
Michigan, yeah, that with the freedom of speech, you can't tell someone they're not allowed to speak. Dearborn, Michigan takes money in from the federal government. It's part of the United States of America. So you can't tell someone they can't talk about Jesus Christ because I'm Muslim and I only want to talk about the great prophet. You can't do that. You're not allowed to because everyone has a protected right to speech. And nobody's allowed to say, well, this town is different. No, everyone that's a U.S. citizen has those God given protections. That's what we
there you
believe.
go. There you go.
It's, you know,
Yeah, absolutely. So, hey,
Sharia law.
let me ask you guys
Yeah.
something else. We were talking before, and point well taken too. Maybe I should, I'm okay with changing the words. Maybe I use radical Islam too much. I could change and say it differently. But my question is, I think we have a lot of agreement on Israel. I got to be honest with you, Ben. I think they have committed war crimes. I don't think it's as intentional as some believed it to be, though. I think it's gone way out of. It's become a wild. It's almost
David,
become like a
listen,
snake with five different heads.
there's a disregard, right? And no one's saying that they've gone out to kill
I
people
don't
and
think they
specifically
purposely tried to
the
do it, but
mentality,
yeah.
right?
But
well, listen to what you're saying, though, Ben. You're
Yeah,
making the statement that this is setting the stage for the end game, right?
yeah,
This is
yeah,
going to be the grand finale.
yeah,
Well, from if I play devil's advocate and I
yeah.
say I'm an Israeli, because I can
Mm.
tell you as a retired soldier, right? I did 20 years. My mindset is completely different. If someone attacks the innocent and I can identify a bad guy, right? And I identify those hang glider guys as bad guys, and any human being that offered them support, I don't care if it was a ham sandwich.
You are
You give them
correct.
support, that's a bad human being. And
You are correct.
I, as a soldier, I fully expect my command to give me the orders to crush, kill, destroy, and break shit until I get that enemy on their knees in total submission. And
Understood. Within the
we
rules of
don't
law.
have
Within the rules of
well,
war.
they are. They are. you're reaching out, right? They're bombing stuff where if they feel that there's
Yeah.
a military threat
That's
there,
where
you can't
a
prove
gray
it.
area. That's where
No,
the
but it's not a
personal.
gray
That's
area in
we were
combat.
talking
It's
about
not in
this.
combat, right? But
It's
when you're in
personal.
combat,
It's you for you as a soldier. You're saying this is where I draw the line. For me as a soldier, I'm saying it's okay for you to do that. I
no,
accept.
I'm not saying
I accept that.
morally, not
I
morally, but
accept that. What?
yeah,
That's the point. That's the point, right? That
right.
where do we draw the line personally
But
ourselves, right?
if they
Because the
stop,
media and all that is just yes,
but you just said that this is the grand finale, and I can tell you they will never be safe.
they won't.
So why would they stop?
They wouldn't. They're
Why would
not
they
going
stop?
to. They're
Because
not going.
they're not going to
He knows
stop
this,
because they
dude. Do
know
you
there's
think they
going to be
don't know
another bus
this?
bomb,
Do
right?
you think that Richard? Please, my
And I
friend,
think,
they
and I think,
know
and
this
no, and
exactly.
right, and I
They
think
know this exactly.
the bad people fully expect Israel to react this way.
Exactly. It's a perfect end game, man. It's and
So
Yeah,
Israel knows.
Hamas
yeah,
baited
they
That's
know
Israel.
it because they're gonna
yes.
inspire Israel to kill more people, to
That's
take out
exactly
more
right.
people and more innocent life, so that they
That's
can create
exactly.
more
And
ire, get
nothing is going
dander
to
up,
come
and
out
it
of it.
just perpetuates.
It
It just
just perpetuates
perpetuates.
because at some point it there is no next step. Look, it, these attacks by the Palestinians, right? They had gone. They started with like suicide bombs, right? Then they did this, then they did that, and they progressively getting worse. There is no worse than this, right? The shock that the Israelis got from this attack was unparalleled, right? It shook their whole entire existence, right? They lived behind like fortresses,
Yeah.
right? You
Oh
see
yeah.
these kibbutzes with like
Yeah.
armories and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And
Full
they,
bomb shelters, everything. Yep.
1,000 of them, 1,500 of
Yep.
them got killed. Illusion of security just went out the window, out there because it isn't. And that's exactly what Hamas wanted to do, right? Baited these guys, televised it, broadcast it, stuck that needle in
So
there.
that would
Huh?
if that's what Hamas wanted, we could classify them as a radical group, right? Now we don't want to call them radical Islam because they're not operating within Islam, but that's a
Dude,
radical ideology, is it not?
it's insane. It's not
Yeah.
radical.
It's
It's
insane. Right, it's
insane,
insane. That's even worse. So that's
right?
even.
It's
But
insane. But,
yeah,
but,
it's
as
not what
insane as it is,
the Quran says, though.
as insane as it is, look, it's just like the guy in prison, right? Those maximum security guys that you hear about. They take their shit and they smear it all over the windows and stuff. You've heard it as a form of protest, right? You're thinking about why are you doing. That's the only thing that they got. That's it.
But
I
here's
have
the issue.
control over
There's no
nothing else except my own shit, and that's
there's
what I'll
no
do. Just
answer.
like this.
There's
Yes,
right. There's no answer to this.
there is none.
Because
This
there
is
is
this
none.
is the
Because
course that it's taking.
Israel is certainly not going to say, okay,
No,
we agree not to exist anymore.
no, no. And
They're
Hamas
not.
knew this. And Hamas
Right.
knew this. Do you think Hamas said, "Oh, we're going to go in there with and kill 1,500 of them, and everything's going to be okay"? They
No.
knew this was going to come.
Yeah.
They knew this was a heavy hand. Come, let's have a showdown. They
What does
called the
that say
showdown, and
about what
Israel took
Hamas
it.
thinks? What does that say about what Hamas
Forget
thinks of
Hamas,
Palestinian?
man. Don't get caught up in doing Hamas.
No, no, no.
Look
Hamas
look
is
who
just
it's going to
an
pull in,
What does
energy
Dave.
it
going.
say?
Look
What
who
does
Huh?
it
it's going to
say
pull
about
in.
what they think of the
Yeah.
Palestinian people, though? If they knew this was going to happen,
Richard has
so they
got the
wanted
right question.
500,000 Palestinian
Right,
people displaced.
David? Do you see what I said?
Richard is
Look
asking the
look
right
who it's going to
question.
pull in.
What's that?
Look who it is going to pull in. It's going to
Yep.
pull in the states, even if
Yep.
you have Muslim states that are not what you would consider radicalized.
Right.
It's going to put them
They're
into
going
a
to stand
defensive
up.
posture.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're going to wind up with massive amounts of turmoil.
Well,
And
and it's beyond.
it very
It's
well could
past
end
the point of.
in World War III. It very well could.
It's past the point. At this point,
Yeah.
I will guarantee you, it's past that point.
Yeah.
It's past the point, man. It's a great segue into our next conversation, man. And I'm going to post a couple of things on this about this, right?
Yeah.
Accelerationism, right? There's a
Yeah.
concept, right? That the fact that the world is coming to an end, society is coming to an end. That's a fact, right? There's many people who actually, like scientifics, like academics, with proof. Here it is. These are the cycles that have been going through and all that, and it is coming. Right? It's coming. Society's going to break down, just like it did after World War II. Right? How everything got restructured, the globe got restructured. Only it's going to be much more severe because AI is coming into the picture. Right? The whole, and Israel is going to be the thing that pushes us in that direction. Right? This situation, and our support of an immoral, unethical freaking state, our unconditional, it's going to paint us in a certain way. That's the problem. When the shit comes down, they're going to look at us in the same way that they look at them. And that's not the right thing. That doesn't make me feel good, right? Because we're just getting dragged along on the year. We're just getting dragged along out of just sheer ignorance, just not realizing what is happening.
And let
And
me
I,
ask you something else,
yeah,
though. Ben,
yeah.
a lot of your points taken on Israel. Just getting back to when we were talking about the 85 countries and that type of thing. Is there anything that Islamic-based countries, and the leadership in Islamic-based countries can do? Have they? I mean, do they look at this the way I look at it, or other people like do they know that 85 countries have been attacked by radical Islam? Do they, like, in other words, if the United States and Israel are going to bear responsibility, for what's going on with the Palestinians. Okay, fine. I can jump on board with that. The Nazis, they're responsible for what they did to Jews, Southern white Americans for the most part, what they did to blacks. You know, what level? Why are the Islamic people trying to take responsibility, or do they want to just say
It's
it's
a
all
homogenous thing.
retaliatory?
It's
It's all
not a
retaliatory.
homogenous thing that is moving in a specific direction
I
under
know it's
one
different
roof.
groups.
It's a whole bunch of people to have everyone. I mean, look at Boko Haram. Look at these people in Africa, these Islamic countries. They're just
Yeah.
freaking insane. They're insane. They're crazy people. They wave the banner of Islam and they have nothing to do with Islam any more than that snake handler is it has to do with Christianity. You know what I mean? It's not. It's their own rendition, their own idea, their own view, right? And they get a whole bunch of people just as ignorant as themselves to follow them along,
Well, let me ask
right?
you
And
something.
blow
Why?
things
Why?
up.
How come in the United? How come? And I'm not saying we have a perfect society by any stretch, but how come in the United States we were able to have a civil war and then a political war to get rid of segregation too, and we made these changes within our country after centuries of clearly mistreating
I
black? How
mean,
are we
yeah,
able to do it? And why can't countries that have commit terrorist attacks, why don't they want to change internally? Is it all Israel and the United States' fault? Or is there something that has gone wrong within?
Well,
are we thinking?
you have
I mean,
issues
there's a
within the two.
reason, right? There's again, we get back to that, David. There's a
We
reason
wanted to
why these
change as a country, right?
terrorist attacks happen,
Yeah.
right? These things that you call terrorist attacks. What are like? What does that mean,
It means
right?
someone
What does that mean?
someone taking it on themselves to kill unarmed innocent civilians and not going after a military force. That's what a terrorist attack is. It's made to create fear
To use
and create
fear,
weakness.
to use fear as a means of a political objective,
But
right?
is it
That's
also
that's
lack of opportunity in these countries too? In other words, is that why not only Israel and the Jews, but is terrorism, festering and
look.
rearing its ugly head because
One,
of lack of
but
opportunity?
I can't speak to the general motivation behind terrorism. I can tell you that it's different in every case. I will know that, but I'll focus my attention on Palestine, right, and what
Okay.
terrorism and the things that they do. So what we call terrorism, right, in Palestine, someone blowing themselves up. There's no higher expression of that, right? That you tie a bomb to yourself and you blow yourself and some other people up towards an objective. That is ultimate terrorism, right? But that has an objective. There's a reason why that happened, right? So from your perspective and from the perspective of the Israelis, that's terrorism. But from the perspective of the actual suicide bomber, it's the ultimate form of sacrifice to give your life towards the pursuit of your objective. And that objective is to get your land back. The objective is to fight for your rights, right? So when we
Well,
call it out,
9/11 was not about getting the land for the Palestinians, was it?
yes, it was. It was the
Oh,
retaliation towards that. It was lit. I will post a little bit inside. It's a whole paragraph in Osama bin Laden's letter to
so then,
America.
so then in a
A
lo-
whole
so
paragraph.
then in a large way, then all these, I won't say radical Islam, all these fundamentalist groups that distort Islam are working together on some way, on some level. Then, so what is Islam doing about this?
What do you mean
If the
working together? Why do you think they're working
in the
together?
United States,
Hmm.
white and black Americans got together and did something about segregation and slavery. What is Islam doing about this? If we know Israel's making mistakes, I want to hold. What can't we hold them accountable, or is we only going to hold white people that commit
Dude,
atrocities accountable?
Islam is a religion, man. These countries are all
I
separate
understand, but if
entities.
you just said
Islam can't
9/11
do
is
anything
connected,
about it. Yeah,
9/11 is connected to Palestine. Why did 3,000 Americans have to die because of what Israel does to Palestine, including 500 Muslims? Where's the
because
justice in
of
that?
it's not because it's because of the U.S. involvement. It's because of the U.S. Can you think Israel could do half the shit that it does without the U.S.? Wake up, David.
No,
You
I
think it does?
understand.
And
I'm not
this
saying that they
war would
don't.
not be going on as long as it is. This war would have been over in the first week had it not been because of the U.S.
I hate even hearing that piece of shit Bin Laden name even uttered. I hate. I have
As you
so much
should, as
venom
you
and hate,
should,
and they
as
should
you
have
should.
dragged his carcass behind that boat for miles,
Yeah, as
miles.
you should, as you should. But the
I
fact
just it
remains the
it
same.
it put so
The
much
fact
ire in
remains
me.
the same. It is
I
the
don't care
fact
what
remains
his
the same.
cause was. I don't care
Well,
what his
let me
cause
ask
was.
something else. Ben, how should Israel have had? What should Israel's retaliation have been? Okay, we have the October 7th. What was it? 1,500 people that died. Instead of doing what they're doing,
Yeah,
what should they have done?
They
1,700.
should have done exactly what they did. This is exactly what they should have done.
So everything they're doing is correct then.
Well,
Everything
that's the
they're doing
problem.
is towards the right object, not correct. It's
That
towards the
right,
right
and
object.
that's the problem. That's what Ben and I were saying before. Is the intent of the terrorist act was to incite this reaction,
Yeah.
because this reaction will light the candle
So
to
you're
get.
saying that Israel is right in their response then? Because I thought all along you've been saying they're wrong.
Right
Well,
or wrong, whatever.
Ben feels that they're occupiers,
Yeah, okay,
in
I understand that.
incorrectly occupying, so that's their wrongdoing there. But he's not
Oh,
saying that
oh,
they're
do you want to go
incorrect,
back to
right?
that?
Right? No,
Does
right?
Israel
Am I
have the
wrong,
right?
Ben?
Let's go some of the basics. No, you're absolutely right. Let's go through
Right?
some of the
Right?
basics.
That's
Does
the
Israel
base
have
of
the right
Ben's.
to exist? Does Israel have the right to exist? Question number one.
Yes, yes, and so do Palestinians.
Absolutely. I agree the same thing. Israel does have the right to exist, but not on someone else's fucking
But Ben doesn't believe that they have the right to exist there in that nation.
Well,
land. They
and
have
that's
the
what they
right
go
to
back to.
exist, of course. The Jews need a home. The Jews need a home, and absolutely, and they have all the rights to defend themselves. But fuck, if you go into my house, if you come into my house and I beat you with a bat, you can't tell me I'm defending myself. No, you are the aggressor in the first place. There is
But they
no
had temples in
defense.
Jerusalem in biblical times. Like, how did this not become their land all of a sudden? That's what. I'm not saying it's their land exclusively.
Look,
They did
let's
all
go
this
back to
reform.
1960. Let's just go back to 1967. Let's just forget about everything before 1967. Let's just say that as far as the UN is concerned, this is not their land, right? As far as
As
the
far as the
UN is
UN is concerned.
concerned, they're occupied. Okay, and let's just say that. So this is why they're fighting. They're fighting for their survival, right?
Well, let me
They're
ask you
fighting
another
for their
question.
survival.
Are,
Yeah.
are there are there anti-Semitic sympathists within the UN as well?
Of course, there's a
Is
lot
Again,
of
South does,
you know,
does South Africa, who's running this investigation, do
the
they have anti?
outcome the outcome again, we talked about this, right? The outcome is irrelevant of the fact. Just like Rodney King, they got beaten on camera and all the cops got off. That doesn't mean that they didn't get beaten. We saw him get beaten. We saw the injustice in that. We made our own minds up,
hmm
right? We made
And
up
I
our
think
own. I'm
most
like,
people
oh,
do.
this was right. Oh, whether you would agree with whether it was right or not, right? You made up your own mind. Whether your mind was made up based on the verdict, right? Or whether it was something you looked at objectively, saying, "No, man, that looks like that guy's getting the shit kicked out of him." I can see that, right? Just like when I look at that report, I can see, right, the evidence of people getting shot. I could see three hostages waving flags getting shot. This is stuff that doesn't change. These are the facts, right? So you got to look at that and make your own mind up, right? As to what, dude. There's that Ohm TV, right? There's the little app that the younger generations using. You log on and it randomly connects you to another location on the globe, right? So you're sitting in front of your computer, boom, a little window pops up, and there's someone that you have no idea who they are, you have no idea where they are, right? Who just like, and then you strike up conversation and you get to know. So I've watched clips of this, right? People have recorded of Israeli soldiers, right? Israeli soldiers, IDF soldiers popping up on these things, right? And you have no idea, and you know it's in Gaza, you know it's somewhere in Israel, and the shit that they see and they do and they say is unbelievable, unbelievable, right? That it's just, and there's nothing to lose. They have no, there's no one knows who they are, where they are, but they're just speaking about the things that they've done. You see clips, like I remember this one Israeli that really stuck out of my mind. This IDF soldier was talking, and there was a bomb site. A bomb had just crashed, and there was smoke and shit everywhere. And she's making a clip, and there's a donkey. There was a mule that was like hit by some rubble and was like injured on the side, and she was crying for this fucking mule. Meanwhile, in the building right behind it was dozens of human beings that were dead, and she was crying for the fucking mule. Right? Just completely. Those other, she was there to kill people. Right? And this speaks of a mentality, right? This speaks of a mentality. I'm not talking about the person individually, and this is what we have to take in to assess the situation,
But
right?
you're giving too much credence
Yeah,
to unverified
yeah,
media there too, right?
dude,
She could have been she
unverified.
could
Yes,
unverified
yes,
media. She could have been that girl that had she seen the
yes,
Palestinian body
yes,
that
yes.
reacted the same
You're
way.
absolutely right. You're
Same as with the
absolutely
guys
right.
waving the white flags. That
You're
could have
right.
been Al Jazeera
You're right.
knowing where to stand, filming it, and an assault going forward, and then
Yeah,
push those guys out and
but it
videotape getting
wasn't.
shot.
But it
But you don't.
wasn't.
How do you know?
Because they just came up. That's what was on the report. The three hostages that were killed. That's
Right?
exactly what
They
was
were
there.
killed. They were killed. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah,
It still could have been staged with the aid of sympathetic media,
yeah.
right?
See,
Who shot
see
the
now,
video? Who
this is
shot the
to
video?
the
That's
extent that Richard. I hear you. I understand. This
right.
is precisely what I'm talking. To what extent are you going to go to give the benefit of the doubt? How
Because
many times will you?
I don't ever want to give the benefit of the doubt. I
Well,
want to make sure I'm making the correct choice. I want to make
understood.
sure I know who's guiding my decisions.
Understood. Understood.
You
But
know?
then, in the absence of you yourself going over there and seeing it, you yourself, with your own personal eyes, absence of that, there is always doubt.
Okay.
Always. Always. So you can
But
never be sure.
human beings have
You,
used propaganda to
I
direct
get it. I
nations'
get it.
opinions,
I
right?
agree with you. I
Yeah.
agree. I agree. So you can never be sure. So what can you do? If you can never be sure, what can you do? You can be reasonable.
Right. No, and
You can
I
be
don't think we're
reasonable.
having we're none of us are calling for anything unreasonable, right? We
You know
don't
what I'm
want to
saying?
ever see
And to
any
my
war, let alone a war.
in my world of reason, when I look at the track record of the IDF, when I look at everything all together, right? When one person comes up and says, "Oh, by the way, three hostages were shot as well," in light of everything else, not just by itself, in light of everything else, being that I can't prove this, in light of all the other things, I'll probably believe it, right? Yeah. Any closing remarks, gentlemen?
Hey, it was great talking to you guys, man. All the best, good health and everything, and thanks for having me. And
Absolutely. No
thanks for putting
problem.
up with some of my long-winded questions.
Love it, Dave. I
Oh,
hope you come
sure.
on again.
Yes. I'm sure the opportunity will arise again. And yes, so that's it. Until next week, Richard. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay,
All
sir.
right, peace, my brothers. Take care,
Bye
man.
bye
Have a good
bye.
night, guys.
Peace.